Hello there. What is going on, everyone? It's time to talk about the Ewok Warriors for Star Wars Legion. We've got ourselves a detailed preview from Atomic Mass Games. We're going to talk about it. There's some unexpected reveals and some very interesting and thematic reveals, and I'll give you some of my thoughts on these beautiful little murder bears towards the end of the video. If you guys are new here to the channel, we do talk an awful lot about tabletop gaming and Star Wars, and a whole lot about where those two meet. And so would love to have you stick around, check out some of our great videos, and become part of our community. We got links to our Discord and social media stuff in the description below. We are doing a big giveaway for Star Wars Shatterpoint core set. That's going to come in the form of a $165 Amazon gift card. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos if you want to have a chance to enter to win that. A lot of people keep asking me, when am I going to announce the winners? I say in most of my videos when, and this one it will be running until the beginning of June. I almost said July. June, yeah. Shatterpoint comes out June 2nd, so probably June 2nd or June 3rd. I'll be announcing the winner. It's not, my schedule's a little bit in flux on some of those things, so, but just watch the videos. I usually announce winners towards the end of the video, so it's my little way of trying to get you to watch all the way through. Hopefully you enjoy the content, and hopefully you'll want to watch anyway. But if not, that's one of the kind of the ways I encourage you to stick around. So that's my methodology. I'm spilling the beans, but hopefully you guys enjoy the content while you're here. We're going to talk about these Ewoks. I also want to thank today's sponsor, Luxury Playstyle. They have amazing full metal tokens. You hear me talk about them. You see them in my battle reports. If you haven't seen my Star Wars Legion battle reports, I'm always using these tokens in my games. They're beautiful. They really stand out. They pop. They glisten. They're gorgeous. They're full metal, double-sided, and absolutely spectacular. They also make great gifts. A great way to treat yourself. Also, a great way to treat your dads. Father's Day is just around the corner, folks. Maybe you're a father trying to give people gift ideas. Let your family and friends know this would be a great Father's Day gift. Tell them to go to luxuryplaystyle.com and use code Crabbok VIP to save 15%. So definitely do that. Check them out. You're going to love what you find there. All right, so let's talk about the Ewok Warriors. We start off with one of two unit cards, the Ewok Skirmisher. These guys are 40 points. They are Bright Tree Village mercenaries. They can go in the Bright Tree Village Battle Force. Again, we still don't have a whole lot of information about the Bright Tree Village Battle Force. We don't know what it's going to entail. We don't know which rebel units will be allowed in to this battle force. We can guess. I would guess that there's going to be the possibility for Han Solo. I can guess there'll be a possibility for Rebel Commandos. Not sure about everything else, but those are just guesses. We're going to wait and see. And even if they are allowed, there may be additional restrictions on them. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Also, Leia. I mean, Leia seems like a given because she does have a command card that works with Wicket. So I think we can pretty much assume that Leia will also be allowed in that battle force. But outside of that, we're going to have a whole lot of Ewoks to try to, I think people are going to be buying a lot of this particular expansion because you're getting one unit's worth of minis in the box, but there's two cards, right? So let's talk about the first one, because again, this is core. This is your core option. I don't know if you're going to be able to use Rebel Troopers. I don't know if you will be able to. You may need a lot of Ewok Skirmishers if you want to run them in Bright Tree Village. Now, they are also Rebel capable. You see that little Rebel insignia up there. That means they can just get a single box of this and run a little bit of Rebels or a little bit of Ewoks in your regular Rebel list. So you can run one or even two of these because they're core in a typical Rebel build. If you've got Underworld connections, you can potentially run a third Ewok Skirmisher in a Rebel build. So, but what do they look like? Well, they're 40 points, so they're not cheap, but they're a little on the lower side. They're about the same cost as Rebel Troopers, but they don't have the same benefits that Rebel Troopers have. They don't have a defensive surge, and they don't even have a ranged attack at all. That's the biggest thing here. No ranged attack whatsoever. I initially thought that Gungans would be like the first unit that we were going to see that didn't have, that were like melee only, and maybe you'd rely on their heavy throwing the Boomba for the range. But no, these guys have no ranged attack at all. Now, you are getting 6 minis in the unit, though. There are 6 minis instead of just 4 like most other core. These guys are kind of like B1s in a way, except B1s at least have a ranged attack. But these guys are 1 health, 1 courage, white defense die, no surge, speed 2. They have a heavy, personnel, and a training. also have low profile, so if they get into cover, they'll be able to cancel an extra die as long as the enemy doesn't have sharpshooter. And they have unhindered, so they can go through terrain a little bit easier, which is pretty thematic. I think that works for the Ewok Skirmishers, but the lack of a ranged attack really hurts these guys, and it makes me not really like them very much, but I guess we'll have to see. I'm not blown away by these guys, and I'll say this. It doesn't matter if they blow you away or not, or if they blow me away or not. Because if you are a fan of Ewoks, play the game to have fun, folks. Have a blast painting these, basing them, getting them on the tabletop, crafting the narrative around your army, battling it out with your opponents, telling a story on the tabletop. Doesn't matter if it's as effective at maybe winning tournaments and being the competitive powerhouse. You can just have fun with a build. I love to have fun with builds. Did you see how many times I ran the 7 Sabers list? It was super fun, and I got my butt kicked every single time. I never won a game. I never even came close to winning a game with that list, but I still love it. So even though the unit card doesn't blow me away, they could still be a lot of fun. So I think that that's a cool thing. But they contrast pretty starkly against the Slingers, which we're going to look at next. The Ewok Slingers also... Bright Tree Village mercenary, capable of going in rebels also. Also 6 miniatures with the same upgrades, heavy, personnel, and training. You also still have unhindered. You also still have low profile. You also have one white defense die, no surge, speed 2. In almost every way they're the same, except for a little bit. The big one is they have a ranged attack. That's one of the first things you notice when looking at these guys. Hey, they have a ranged attack. They still have that primitive keyword. Now, this is on both the Ewoks have a primitive option, right? Or is it Wicket's? No, Wicket's Spear has a primitive. These guys don't have primitive. We were looking at Wicket not too long ago, so I'm getting... Primitive is the keyword that is going to mean that, hey, these things aren't really good enough to go into armor. Even if you get lucky and roll a crit, it's going to turn into a hit. So, you kind of don't like primitive on these guys very much. That being said, they still have a black die at range 2, so black dice aren't terrible, and so like the rebel troopers have black die with no surge to hit, so you still have fairly decent numbers you'll put out. Plus, you're running six people here, so if they don't get hit, they're only you're running 6 black dice for 35 points. That's it. Also, folks, the skirmishers are 40. These guys are, in my opinion, better. I'd say just a lot better, as a matter of fact, for 5 points less. What gives? They're not core. They're special forces. How many of you didn't notice that the first time you looked at this? I didn't at first. I looked at this, I went back and forth a couple of times, like, why are they cheaper when they're so much better? Why are they cheaper when they're so much better? Why would I ever want to run Ewok Skirmishers? Until I realized, oh, special forces... I have to have at least 3 core, presumably. And of course, that depends on what the Battle Force rules are. They may change the number of core options required. It may be less than 3, maybe more than 3. I don't know how many core and special forces I'm going to need for Bright Tree Village, but I do know that I really like the Ewok Slingers better than the Stabby McStabberstons and the Ewok Skirmishers. We also gain Independent Surge 1, so if they don't get issued in order, they're still going to at least get 1 Surge token, which is going to be great. And if they do get issued in order, they have Target 1, so they'll have an Aim token. So that's pretty cool. That totally works. They're still not a great unit when you look at everything that they've got. That lack of Surge, the heavy weapons and personnel options that are available for them aren't my favorite, and we'll look at those here in a minute. But what makes these guys really good, in my opinion, is that you have a 35-point unit that's got 6 minis in it, and at least can get 1 surge. Like these would make a decent add to a rebel list. Like I wouldn't ever want to add the skirmishers to a rebel list. These guys for me would be a Bright Tree Village, just fulfilling my core requirements and nothing more. But the Ewok Slingers, these guys could potentially find their way into a rebel, let's have some fun in the jungle kind of rebel list with borrowing a single merc unit of Ewok Slingers. For 35 points, I could take these and not need to add anything else. which is kind of cool. So, with that being said, let's look at some of the upgrades that are going to come in here because while we have a core and a special forces, we've only got a single heavy and a single personnel. So let's talk about those first. I'm going to talk about the outsides. On the far left, we've got the Axe Ewok. Now, don't forget these units are 35 or 40 points respectively. This is a 15-point heavy, so kind of expensive when you think about, hey, I'm getting 6 minis already. It only bumps me up to 7, but it's almost half the cost of the whole unit. It gives you a red die in melee for the Axe Ewok and Pierce 1 and Impact 1. So that's not bad. Of course, it does require that you are in melee range to be able to use that Axe Ewok. Now, Pierce 1 and Impact 1 are tied to the weapon. It's not like the Axe Ewok is going to... I mean, he can throw the sling, but he won't be able to add Pierce and Impact to his ranged attack. That's only for his melee. Now, the Ewok Trapper is your personnel option, and he's a 10-point personnel, and he also gives you an extra training upgrade. Now, you already got 1 training on both of these units, but now you can have a second training option, and that's going to give you definitely more options. Now, if you're planning on running these things bare bones, especially if you're going with the Slingers, I wouldn't run either one of these guys. It's not totally necessary. I think these are probably better options for a Bright Tree Village build when you're really trying to fill up points and fill up on your Ewoks. But it's still, it gets you an extra body. You know, you can get up to 8 minis in the unit. It's going to take up a lot of real estate. It's going to take up a lot of room. But you know, it could be fun. Again, if you're trying to get that Ewok swarm mentality going, then that'll do it. Now, we got 3 new training upgrades in the middle to talk about. We've got Call to Arms, which is a limited. It's got 2 dots on there, kind of like the Uniques, which means you can run 2 Call to Arms in a build. It's going to be Bright Tree Village Trooper only, and it's a 5-point exhaustible, and it's going to give somebody charge, and also going to gain a suppression token. So they're going to be, they're just going to do this big thing and call out everybody. I guess they get suppressed by blowing the horn. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but I think it's just part of the balance. But giving them charge until the end of the round is cool. So this way, that is going to be something that's going to make your skirmishers a little bit better at melee. I think that's going to be a good item to use, especially if you have the Axe Ewok. So if you're running your Bright Tree Village and you're running an Axe Ewok with your skirmishers, which is probably the best thing to do if you're really focused on melee, let's give the melee Impact 1 and Pierce 1 and Call to Arms in there too and all that other stuff. So that's all a good thing. You can only have 2 Call to Arms though. Now, does look like Call to Arms can potentially go on. We haven't seen Logray yet, but you can put him on other Ewoks as well. He's not restricted to the Skirmishers or the Slingers, but he is restricted to Bright Tree Village. We've got Forest Dwellers, which is Bright Tree Village Trooper only. From now on, I'm just going to call it Ewok Trooper only. Ewok isn't a creature subtype officially in the game, so you really just use the Bright Tree Village symbol for that. But it's going to give somebody Scout 1, and then they're going to start with a dodge. I think Scout is important for Ewoks. You're going to want to be close to enemy troopers. Getting a free move at the beginning of the game is a kind of a way to get yourself closer and in range of whether you're trying to get into melee or range 2 for the Slingers. You want to be close. Plus, Legion is also sometimes about objectives. I had this big discussion in our Discord about how I kind of like Legion when it comes down to rolling dice and trying to kill everybody in your opponent's army, and so few games end up coming down to that. But I really do love the dice, the slugfests where we're just slugging it out and not trying to hide behind objectives and steal objective tokens. And I'm like, no, I want to blow everybody up. I don't want to play for the objective. I just want to roll dice, So I really like doing that. Not to dismiss the strategic part of the game, but I do enjoy the slobber knockers, so to speak. So Forest Dwellers is good for both versions. It gets you close enough to do your attacks, but also can put you closer to an objective if you are actually trying to play strategically and win the game. Insatiable Curiosity, our third and final upgrade to talk about today for the training slot, is pretty bizarre. It's wild. It's out there. I think it's the one upgrade everybody's going to be talking about the most. It's inexhaustible. It has a lot of costs associated with it. It is a training. It costs 8 points. You can only use it once per game. And it needs an errata also. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. It says, it's wild. So it says to choose an enemy unit in base contact with this unit's unit leader that has a heavy weapon, a gear, or an armament equipped. You could discard one of those non-unique or limited upgrades, and then the Ewok then suffers a wound. So basically, I've got like Cassian Andor sniper rifle. Oh, what's this? And they kind of break it, or maybe they shoot themselves with it and run off with it, or something like. Or they run off with it and shoot themselves, or kind of like the Ewok flees the battlefield from a certain point of view. Maybe they hurt themselves. Maybe they blow up. They snap at it and it blows up, and they blow into in a comic explosion or whatever. Either way, you're taking an upgrade away from your opponent's list. Now, this can be absolutely critical. There's certain weapons that are incredibly good. There's certain ones that are less than good. Like you wouldn't want to take away somebody's emergency stims if they had maybe exhausted it to save 2 wounds, but had the tokens on the card, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to get rid of your emergency stims, and well, that means I don't have to take the 2 damage next turn. Thank you. Which would be a really weird interaction. But I think one of the biggest things is to kill a heavy weapon. Like you could basically knock out somebody's heavy weapon, and what's bizarre about it discards the upgrade. It doesn't kill the unit. Right? So like the way it's worded is so bizarre because I would assume, and it's going to need some rules reference guides stuff. Like if I'm Vader and I force choke your Z6 heavy weapon person, well, I do a wound to him. So then he would die. But, you could potentially heal him that same turn. And this, you can't heal him. And does the mini actually die? Like I'm inclined to think so, because if I kill the upgrade card, or does the mini remain and he just counts as like a normal mini? Like, so what's going to happen with that? What happens to that heavy? Can he just not shoot the gun anymore? But do I get to keep the model? Have you only stolen his gun? What if I have a dark trooper and he's like a 35-point heavy, and you just like boom, he's gone. Oh, was he a 2 health unit? He's gone. Like that's insane. So it needs some FAQs, like what happens if an upgrade card that adds a mini to the unit goes away. Does the mini also, like, does he die? Can he be healed? Is he teleported into the void? Like, what's the status of that? And as far as trying to counter it or deal with it and having it interact with other effects in the game. The other really big thing about this card that I think needs an errata is there's no timing window on it. Insatiable Curiosity, it just says choose an enemy unit in base contact with this unit's leader. Like when? Can I do this during my opponent's turn? If you move into base contact with me, can I then interrupt you to trigger it? Because normally something like this would have an action arrow or a free action sort of double arrow or arrow and a half, like that's the lined arrow. So I'm curious if Insatiable Curiosity is meant to be a full action, which would make it even harder because you'd have to move into base contact and then use your action to kill a heavy. Or is it a free action? Could I like do a double move? Because then it'd be, then I'd have some range on my threat of doing this. So how's Insatiable Curiosity really supposed to work? When can I choose? Can I choose at any point? Can I choose in between rounds? Because we need to know when the choose happens so your opponent can plan around that and know how to react to it. Because every other card that does an action or a distinct effect has a timing window. It would say like when something happens, then you can react to it this way. This just says choose. Okay, I think there's probably just going to be a double arrow. My guess is it's either an action or a free action symbol that would go in front of that whole choose, because it really needs that. Granted, just an FAQ telling us what the developers intended it to be, because the difference between it being a free action and being a full action, or even more rare, a double action, does it take 2 full actions? So do I have to move into base contact with you, survive, and then hopefully go first next round, and then be able to do it? That would make it much more difficult to use. That would make it extremely difficult, because then all my opponent would have to do is go first and then withdraw, and then it wouldn't work anymore. So, what's the timing? What's the triggers? What are the criteria for actually being able to use Insatiable Curiosity? Inquisitive minds would like to know. I'm insatiably curious as to how this card works. Bada-boom. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. That's worthy of a mini crab.
Oh yeah, baby.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah, let's play
Because he
some
thinks I'm
games.
hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that is a look at the Ewok Warriors. Very interesting unit. I hope you guys have fun with it. I hope you guys who are fans of the Ewoks are looking forward to these. There are also Ewoks coming out for Shatterpoint. I'm curious how those are going to be different than these Ewoks. And I'm curious if there's any more stuff, like what is all coming for Bright Tree Village? Like, what is the battle force going to look like? We'll talk about it as it gets released, guys. That's going to do it for today's video. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are out of this world. Thank you so much for making this channel possible. I'll talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Cowabunga. Nunchucks forever. Always wash your socks. So say we all.